What's up, you Sigma the Bluffers? In this one, I'm back at final table for their monthly 20k guaranteed tournament. After a long dry spell, I finally scored a min cash the month before. I'm looking to do better tonight. Let's get into it. In this first hand, we're at the 100, 200, 200 level. Under the gun raises 4x to 800. Middle position calls, hijack calls, button calls. There's already 17 and a half big blinds in the pot before I look down at ace king offsuit in the small blind. Definitely going to be 3-betting here, and honestly, I'd be happy just taking the pot down pre-flop. I decide to make it 5x the original raise, 4100. This gets a fold from the undergun original raiser. Middle position. Hijack, however, decides that if their hand was good enough for 800, it's good enough for 4100. Button folds. We're going heads up and out of position to a flop of 10, queen 10, 2 diamonds. I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what to do here. I suppose I'm going to play my entire perceived range of aces, kings, queens, ace king, ace queen, c-bet for 3500. The hijack takes about 30 seconds before going all in for 14,000. Fuck. Going quickly through their possible holdings, considering the pre-flop and flop action, I think the only hand I lose to that makes sense is ace queen. I don't think they flat the original raise with aces, kings, or queens. I don't think they're jamming pocket jacks or tens. With the king and queen of diamonds accounted for, the only hand I'm barely ahead of is ace jack of diamonds. Anyway, I end up making the fold. As you can guess from the title of this episode, this is the first of several hands where I got dealt ace king, and shocking as it may be, I think this is the one I messed up the least. The very next shuffle, we're at the 200, 300, 300 level. The very active cutoff opens to 900, and it looks like the poker gods offer me a shot at redemption as I pick up pocket aces on the button. I 3-bet to 2500, the big blind cold calls, and the cutoff makes the call as well. We go 3 ways to a pretty safe looking flop of 4, 5, 7, 2 spades. I don't think my opponents are going to have too many sets here. They both check to me, and with 2 players calling my 3-bet, I find myself with a stack to pot ratio of precisely 1. There's 8,000 in the middle, and I have 8,000 behind. Into the middle they go. Both opponents fold. I would have loved to score a full double up, but at least I partially recover from the previous hand. About an orbit later, the low jack limps before I look down at ace king from the cutoff. I raise to 1500, the button calls, the big blind calls, and the low jack limper calls. We're going 4 ways to a flop of 9, 10, king, 2 spades. Upon seeing this flop, the big blind donk leads for 2500. The low jack calls. What do I do now? Considering my options, I think folding is out of the question at this point. Calling 20% of my stack and see a turn? What if the turn comes a spade, a queen, or a jack? Will I call what will most likely be an all-in bet from one of my opponents? And then there's the third option, shoving. I guess I could get max value from king queen, king jack, and a spade if the board runs clean. I can protect my hand versus weaker flush draws. I also completely value cut myself against a set of 10s or 9s, king 10 suited or queen jack. I don't know, to be honest, this feels like a super dicey spot. In summary, I thought that folding was way too nitty. Just calling felt like I was going to be put in way too many uncomfortable spots on the turn. So all in it is. The button gets out of the way, and now the small blind goes into the tank for about a minute, after which they decide to fold, at which point I'm super happy as they were the player I was the most concerned about. It's now on the low jack, and they take one more look at their cards in a way that makes me think they're not really loving the situation, but they end up making the call with queen jack of spades for a flop straight and the second nut flush draw. What the hell was that tank about? Anyway, let's go to run out.
Oh, flop is nice. Runner. Oh, there we go.
Straight, we'll take it.
As you can see, the turn came at king, giving me trips, so I think if I had just called on the flop, there was no way I was finding a fold on the turn. It was one of the best cards in the deck for me as it opened up a whole bunch of ways for me to boat up. Sadly, I bricked out on the river, and that's bullet number 1 gone.
Rebuy?
Yep.
Rebuy 9-7.
Ace king is being a real pain in my ass tonight, and it's far from being over. On to bullet number 2. It's been a while since I fired 2 bullets in this tournament. Hopefully things go a little bit more smoothly. 2 hands later, at the 200, 400, 400 level, there's a limp from under the gun. I look down at ace-jack offsuit in middle position and raise it up to 1500. It folds all the way back to the under the gun limper, who makes the call. Quick note on this player, they've been involved in just about every pot since I took my seat at the table. We go heads up to a flop of king, queen 7, under the gun checks, and against a calling station type player with a very wide range. I'm happy to check this back. Ace high is good most of the time here. Turn comes another queen, which doesn't change much. Under the gun checks, and I check back again. River comes the ace of clubs. Under the gun checks for a 3rd time. I want to try and extract a tiny bit of value from any single pair my opponent could be holding. I bet 1000, and they pretty quickly fold. Another 2 hands later, under the gun calls, cutoff calls, button calls, and the small blind calls before I look down at queen 3 of diamonds in the big blind. I check my option. We go 5 ways to a flop of ace, ace 5, 2 diamonds. I pick up the 2nd nut flush draw. Small blind checks, I check, and action checks around. The turn comes the 4 of clubs, giving me a gut shot straight draw to go along with my flush draw. Action checks around to the cutoff, who bets 700. It folds to me, and I make the call. Under the gun comes along as well. 3 ways to the river, which comes a beautiful 7 of diamonds. If either of my opponents has an ace, I think they'll most likely check back if I check, so I want to try and extract some value from my flush. I bet 2000, and sadly, both opponents make the fold. At the 300, 600, 600 level, action folds to me in the hijack, and I look down at pocket queens. I open to 2000, and the big blind is the only player to make the call. We go heads up to a flop of 3, 10, 5, 2 clubs, and the big blind checks to me. I see bet for 2000, and they make the fold. A few hands later, I pick up king jack suited from under the gun. I raise to 1500, and I get called by the low jack, hijack, cutoff, button, and big blind. Quick note, I start this hand with around 20 big blinds. I'm having a hard time building up a stack, and I may slightly be tilted to be going 4, 5, or 6 ways to the flop and raise pots. It's making it really hard to make any sort of creative plays. You have to play a very value-oriented game, and if you're not hitting flops, you're going to have a bad time. So anyway, we're going 6 ways to the flop with almost 10,000 in the middle and just over 10,000 in my stack. Needless to say, I'm not going to be very picky when it comes to what boards I'll be looking to get it in all in. And when the flop comes 9 ace 6, giving me the nut flush draw, that's good enough for me. Let's set up a check raise. Big blind checks to me, I check. Low jack bets 4,500, which is a little bit annoying as it removes a lot of whatever fold equity I might have. Things get a little spicy when the hijack calls. Action folds back to me, and I go along with my plan and jam for just over 10,000. I get a pretty clear picture of the situation I'm in when the low jack quickly 3-bet shoves for over 16,000. I'm most likely up against a set of 6s or 9s. This prompts the hijack player to go into the tank for over a minute before making the call. We're in a 3-way all-in. I have a chance of getting a full triple up. The hijack shows ace queen, no clubs, and as I suspected, the low jack shows pocket 6s. Let's go to a run out.
I would love a club right now.
No club, please. No club, please.
Shout out to Jordan, the low jack player, who was really excited to make the vlog. But you see, Jordan, when people make the vlog, it's either because they lost a bunch of chips or I did. And if given the choice, I'd rather be the one taking the chips. In any case, thanks for the support, Jordan. It's always a pleasure meeting people who watch the channel, and an even bigger pleasure to take their chips. I'll see you around. I scored this nice triple up just as we had the first break. I'm sitting on just over 40,000. The average stack is currently around 23,000. Let's jump back into the action. It takes a little while before I get involved in a hand. I haven't picked up many playable hands since moving to this new table, at which my buddy Ricky is absolutely sun running, building up a monster stack, and playing table captain. Shout out to Ricky. Finally, at the 500, 1000, 1000 level, action folds to me and I pick up ace jack in the hijack. I raise to 2000, cutoff calls, and Ricky in the big blind makes the call. We go 3 ways to a flop of ace, ace, deuce, 2 clubs. Ricky checks to me. Since I'm holding the jack of clubs, I decide to throw in a check here for deception, and the cutoff checks as well. The turn comes the king of diamonds, and I'm hoping Ricky will read my check as weakness and start firing, but sadly, he checks. With 2 flush draws on the board, there will be no more checking for me. I bet 4,200, the cutoff calls, and Ricky folds. We're going heads up to a brick river, 8 of hearts. I think the cutoff is going to show up with a lot of missed draws, in which case they probably won't call a bet. So I decide to get a little tricky again and check, hoping to induce a bluff for my opponent, but sadly they check back. It doesn't look like I missed much value. Anyway, I take the pot down. In this one, action folds to me in middle position, and I look down at king jack offsuit. I open to 2,000, and the hijack is the only player to make the call. Going once again to battle with this player to a flop of king 8 queen rainbow. I fire a small c-bet of 1,200, and a cutoff folds. I unfortunately go completely card dead. As a comparison, I played 7 hands before the first break, or at least 7 that made the vlog, and as you just saw, I only played 2 hands before the second break. It's been a rough few levels of being completely card dead, which was made extra annoying by the fact that this table feels pretty soft. I'm sitting on just under 28,000, far below the average of 67,000. We'll be coming back to the 1,000, 2,000 levels, so around 14 big blinds for me. Hopefully I can find some good spots to double up and start building up some momentum towards that elusive first place of just over 8,000 bucks. Let's get back into it. Well, it's still card dead city for me. We're now at the 1,500, 3,000, 3,000 level. I'm sitting on just over 21,000 when I look down at pocket deuces from under the gun. I shove. Action folds around to the small blind, who 3-bet shoves and covers. Big blind gets out of the way, so we're going heads up to a run out, and I'm up against pocket 5s. Fuck. I would have preferred a flip, but unfortunately I am crushed. They say deuces never loses, right? Let's see the run out.
Alright, nice hand.
And with this, my tournament comes to an end. I want to give a shout out to Ricky, who continued to dominate the table and the tournament and chopped it 4 ways with 50% of the chips in play. He also banked a WSOP circuit ring earlier this year. Congrats, Ricky, and keep crushing. Preferably not when you're at my table. Thank you. It's time for me to head to the cash game streets. I buy in for the max 400 bucks, and I take a seat at a 1-2 table. In this first hand, there's a raise from under gun to 10. The hijack calls. I look down at 6-5 suited in the big blind, and I make the call. We go 3 ways to a flop of 9 king jack 2 diamonds, giving me a flush draw and some backdoor straight possibilities. I check in flow, hoping to set up a check raise, but action checks around. The turn comes a red queen, but not a diamond. I check, and now under the gun fires a delayed c-bet of 15 bucks. The hijack folds, and with 6 high, I should probably go for a check raise, but I decide to just make the call. The river comes the 7 of diamonds. I make my flush. Fun fact, the last 3 flush draws I flopped were diamond draws, and they all completed with the 7 of diamonds. Not so fun fact, I check only for the other player to check back and win the minimum. Damn it. In this one, we're playing a double barrel bomb pot. 6 of us see a flop of king, king 3 rainbow on top, 8-5 ace, 2 spades on bottom. I'm in the big blind with ace, king, jack, 7-3. I flop the current nut high on top, kings full of 3s, and a 78 low on bottom. Being second to act, I decide to start with a check. It checks all the way to the button, who bets 30. I check raise to 75. Folds back to the button, who makes the call. Heads up to the turn, which comes a 10 of spades on top, queen on bottom. Nothing changes. There's 180 in the pot, and the button has 165 behind. I decide to wager that amount, and they make the call. The run out comes a 5 on top and 3 on bottom. I show my boat, which is good. I was fully expecting to chop against a better low, but no, the button went for it with only a king in their hand, and luckily they did not river a bigger boat, and I'm going to scoop this pot. Awesome start to the session, and I've already recouped my tournament buy-in. Nice. In this one, the under the gun player limps, and just when I thought things were going good, look who shows up. Ah, shit, it's ace king. I raise to 15 and I get called by the cutoff and the undergun limper. We go 3 ways to a flop of ace king 10 2 diamonds, an eerily similar spot to my last ace king hand where I flop top pair on a pretty wet board. Under the gun checks to me. With no diamonds in my hand, I'm going to c-bet a little bit larger and make it 30 to go. The cutoff raises to 75. Ah shit, here we go. Under the gun gets out of the way and it's back on me. Quick note on the cutoff player, I've never played with them, but they look like they spent the day out fishing. They've been pretty active at the table. I could be way off the mark, but I'm getting slightly degen vibes from them, and I just saw them take down a pot by 3-betting 9-8 suited preflop. I don't judge people by their appearance, I'm just making observations. All this to say, they could be doing this with a whole bunch of hands. I'm not folding top, I make the call. Heads up to the turn, which comes the 8 of hearts. Overall, a pretty good card as it makes it less likely that I was up against a set of 8s. I check and float to the cutoff, who bets 50 into a pot of 200. I'm not entirely sure what to make of this sizing. My read on the flop was that they were on the draw, which leads me to read this bet as them trying to set their prize to see the river and possibly keep the pot manageable in order to set up a river bluff. I think I played the hand okay up to this point. However, this is where things start going off the rails. I decide to check raise to 130. What the hell is the sizing? Well, I don't completely hate it. I guess if I was holding pocket kings, I'd do the same thing, trying to give draws a good price to call while drawing dead. But here my goal was more to shut the hand down and take the pot, in which case, yeah, it's way too small. Anyway, you're probably wondering, so how does the cutoff react to your check raise? They freaking 3-bet shove for 476 total. That's how they react. And what did I do? I decided to go with my read, put my big boy pants on, and call. Let's go to the run out.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, that's
Nice under.
warm out. I gotta.
I want to give a shout out, or more appropriately, a hail to Caesar, who absolutely owned me in this hand. Looks like he wasn't done fishing and he caught a big one, me. After running up my stack to being profitable for the night, I am now left with a measly 32 bucks, almost 600 bucks in the hole. It's at this point that everyone at the table agrees to doing bump pots only. Welcome to Portland Poker at its finest. There's going to be a ton of action. I hope you enjoy. Let's go. In this one, we're playing 5-2-2. 6 of us see a flop of 10 queen 4, 2 clubs on top, 9-5-8, 2 spades on bottom. I'm in the hijack with king jack jack 10-4, 2 clubs and 2 hearts. I flop an open-ended straight draw and a second nut flush draw on top and an open-ended straight draw on bottom. Action checks around. The turn comes an ace on top and the ace of hearts on bottom. I turn the nut straight on top and I pick up the second nut flush draw on bottom. Action checks to me and I go all in for 32 bucks. And 3 players make the call. 4 ways to the river, which comes the deuce of clubs on top, giving me the second nut flush, and a 5 of clubs on bottom. Action checks around, and my flush on top is good for half the pot. I chop with the big blind, who boated up on bottom with pocket 8s. In this one, we're playing double barrel. 7 of us see a flop of 6-6-8 rainbow on top, 5 jack ace rainbow on bottom. I'm in the cutoff with ace king jack 7-6. For the high, I currently have trip 6s with an ace kicker on top 2 on bottom, which can improve to a boat, and there's currently no low possible. Action checks around. Turn comes a queen of clubs on top and an ace on bottom. I turn the nut high on bottom, aces over jacks, and there's still no low possible. Early position player leads for 33 bucks, folds to me, I jam for 54, and 2 players, including the original bettor, call. 3 ways to the river, which comes a king on top and a 4 on bottom, opening up a low. I make a 67 low, but I'm not too hopeful as there's quite a few better lows possible. We go to showdown. My full house is good for half the pot, and to my surprise, my low is good, so I actually scoop this $200 pot. Let's go. Here's another double barrel bomb pot. 7 of us see a flop of deuce 10-5 all diamonds on top, 5-4-7 2 spades on bottom. I'm in the small blind with ace king jack jack 3. I don't have much as far as the high hand goes, but I do flop a 57 low on bottom. I'm only losing to ace deuce. I check, under the gun bets 25, cutoff calls, button calls, and I make a speculative call. 4 ways to the turn, which comes the jack of diamonds on top and 8 of diamonds on bottom. I improve to top set for the high hand, but with flushes and straights available, it's more of a full house draw. I check, under the gun continues for 40, the 2 other players fold, and with the second nut low and the redraw to a full house, I make the call. The river comes a 10 on top, giving me the second nut high, jacks over 10s, I only lose to quad 10s. Bottom comes a queen, which changes nothing. With the nut high and the second nut low, I put the rest of my stack in, 39 bucks, and under the gun makes the call. And unfortunately, there will be no scoop this time as under the gun shows ace deuce for the nut low, and we chop. It's another double barrel bomb pot, but it's a $10 bomb pot this time, so there's already 80 bucks in the middle as we go 8 ways to a flop of 10 5 jack, 2 diamonds on top, 6 8 king rainbow on bottom. I'm under the gun with king queen 9 8 4. I flop an open-ended straight draw and the second nut flush draw on top, and I've got top 2 on bottom, and there's currently no lows possible. I check, middle position bets 15, low jack calls, hijack calls, cutoff calls, button calls, big blind calls, and I make the call as well. 7 ways to the turn, which comes a 7 on top and a king on bottom. I turn the nut high, kings over 8s, and there are still no lows possible. Time to pump money into this pot. I jam for 80 bucks, middle position calls, folds to the button who shoves for over 400 bucks, which gets middle position out of the way. We go heads up to the river, which comes a 10 of clubs on top, downgrading my full house to the second nut high. The nuts would be quad 10s, and bottom comes a 7, opening up some lows. Headed to showdown, and I am gutted to see the button show king 8s for the same full house as mine, which means I'm probably getting quartered if they have a low, but they don't. So overall, relieved and happy to be chopping here. Couple more bomb pots for you guys. In this one, we're playing 5-2-2. 8 of us see a flop of 5-5 ace on top, king queen 3 on bottom. I'm on the button with king queen 10 5-4. I flop trip 5s on top and top 2 on bottom. Big blind bets 10, hijack calls, cutoff calls, and I call. 4 ways to the turn, which comes a 5 on top. I've got quads, baby. And bottom comes a jack, giving me an open-ended straight draw to go along with my top 2. The big blind leads again for 10 bucks. Come on, man, I need you to bet more. Hijack calls, cutoff calls. I decide to slow play my quads and just call. Hopefully this pot builds up on the river. The river comes a 3 on top, which opens up a possible straight. And bottom comes a 7. I break out on all my draws, but I still have top 2, and who knows, maybe it's good. The big blind once again bets 10 bucks, but now the hijack raises all in to 75 bucks. Music to my ears. The cutoff calls the 75, also music to my ears.
Won't you give this love just one more try?
It's time to spring the trap. I 3-bet shove for 135 bucks. The big blind gets out of the way, but the cutoff makes the call. Headed to showdown. My quads are obviously good for half the pot, and unfortunately my top 2 on bottom is no good. I end up chopping both the main and side pots with the cutoff, who has a straight with either ace 10 or 10-9. This brings us to the final hand of this vlog. From 37 bucks, I managed to run my stack back up to almost 200 bucks. If I can take down one more big pot, I might be able to fight my way back to a break-even session. So here we go. In this one, we're playing 5-2-2. I start off with king, king, 3-3-3 in middle position. 8 of us see a flop of deuce, 9, queen, 2 clubs on top. Nothing for me. But bottom comes 3-5 king. I flop top set. Action checks to me and I bet 25 bucks. 4 players make the call. 4 ways to the turn, which comes a 7 on top, 8 on bottom. I still have the nuts on top. There's 140 bucks in the pot. I've got 160 in my stack. I jam. The low jack makes the call. And the small blind now raises all in for just over 300 bucks, and the low jack makes the call. We're going 3 ways to the river with over 900 bucks in the pot. I don't have much of a claim to top, but if bottom river's clean, I've got half the pot coming my way. Let's go to a run out. Oh, by the way, Did you know that not only am I one, if not the only vlogger on YouTube showing you bomb pots like double barrel, dramaha, texaha, but I'm also teaching you French. In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to say, please don't put a fucking diamond on bottom.
Putain, pas de caramba, s'il te plaît. Pas de caramba.
And now we're going to learn, fuck, he put the deuce of diamonds.
Putain, il met le dos de carreau.
Yes. Diamond and Kuha.
And as the dealer puts down the deuce of diamonds, the small blind slams queen six of diamonds on the table for the second nut flush on bottom, like it's impossible that the low jack or myself had the nut diamond draw. We didn't, but still. And with pocket nines, they have a boat on top, so they're going to scoop this pot.
It is painful. All right, nice hand, man.
This concludes this episode. Thank you if you made it this far. I was in for $200 in the tournament and did not cash. Bought in for $400 in the cash game and did not cash out. That's a loss of $600 on the evening, the most I've lost in quite a while. I have to say though, everyone at my table was super enjoyable to play with and I had a ton of fun. I think there's kind of a camaraderie amongst bomb pot players as we take turns watching each other getting 3, 2, or 1 outered, breaking out on all our draws, getting quartered. Bomb pots are not for everyone, but they're part of the DNA of the Portland poker scene, and I, for one, really enjoy them. I hope you do as well, or that maybe you'll grow to like them after watching my vlogs. Thank you so much for watching, good luck at the tables, and catch you in the next one.